And we welcome Algie to the Resistance this morning. Also, good morning, America. Your National Guard is guarding floating pieces of blue paint this morning, so I feel safer. Christopher,
yes.
Who said Barbara McQuaid has written one of the single best books that has been written by anyone about the way Trumpism works, is going to end up being one of the definitive accounts of Trump's return to power. Who said that?
Robert De Niro.
No, that was Rachel Maddow.
Oh.
Who also blurbed my book.
Yes, yes. Robert De Niro also blurbed Barb's book. Yeah.
The name of the book is The Fix, Saving America from the Corruption of a Mob-Style Government. And Robert De Niro said, "Nice book you got here, McQuaid. Be a shame if anything was to happen to it." Good morning, Barb McQuaid. Congratulations, and we miss you so much.
Oh, good morning, Stephanie. The jingle always cracks me up. Thank you for the fine walk-up music. I appreciate it.
I love that Robert De Niro went on to say Barb McQuaid exposes Donald Trump's gangsterism. And I just said it this morning with this latest, while we're trying to negotiate an Iran deal, he literally says, you won't even get back to your country if you... The President of the United States says that to which of course caused them to walk out, and the deal is blown to smithereens once again. The non-deal or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, it's really amazing how far Donald Trump has pushed what has become acceptable rhetoric from a president.
Yeah.
He's done it incrementally, but now we're at this point where, there are people who sort of laugh him off. There are people who cheer him on, but I think most of us are just horrified that this is what passes as statesmanship in 2026. We are so overdue for a course correction with a real leader who unites us and is not just, the loudmouth at the country club.
Those of us that even have to soak in this, right, Barb? It's amazing that we can still be shocked by anything he says or does. And I have to say, what do I say, Chris? This show has become me asking the smartest people in the world the stupidest questions in the history of the world. Just one post I say for you. The president made a serious criminal allegation about the reflecting pool, vandals, slashed lining, chemical dumping, arrests, and provided zero evidence. NPR reports no agency has confirmed any of it. Here we go again. Jeanine Pirro saying, I'll prosecute people to the fullest extent of the law. We're going to have D.C. grand juries going, what now?
It's laughable, but when he starts, complaining, and that's one thing. But there's the disinformation of claiming this is vandals without any basis, as you say. But there was a man arrested over the weekend, a cyclist, for what he says was just touching the water. He wanted to see what this blue, slime paint peel felt like. That's not a crime. And he was charged with destruction of government property. This is what happens in Russia, right? Yeah. You arrest people to advance a narrative or to silence critics. This man's life has been seriously disrupted. Now, I doubt he will be convicted of any crimes, but in the meantime, his life was going to be hell, and he's going to get a whole bunch of backlash from Trump supporters. It's a really dangerous thing to abuse the criminal law in this way. Yeah,
and you deal in all your life, Barb, in the law, in evidence. And here we go, where you're trying to convince people that January 6th didn't happen when we saw hours and hours of videotape of it. Now he's literally trying to convince people, this is his latest conspiracy theory, that Democrats or somebody vandalized the reflecting pool. I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so horrifying, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of something that I found in my research, which is the way Vladimir Putin conducts himself. He says all kinds of things, and the goal is not so much to get you to believe what he says or to believe that he has integrity, but to believe in nothing, to believe that you can't, who knows what the truth is, and to believe that all politicians are crooks, and if so, well, then who cares if anybody breaks some rules? They're all crooked anyway. What really matters is the one who's out there fighting for me or shares my values, and so I don't care about the rule of law. But, this country was built on the rule of law. We haven't always gotten it right, and there certainly have been mistakes or human error or abuses of the rule of law, but it's still an ideal, and it is about the idea that all of us are equally responsible for carrying out the law, for obeying the law, and that it will be administered equally against all of us. And now to see President Trump, the way he's used it to pardon the January 6th attackers, and now to go after this man for touching the water, and so many other examples, with Jim Comey and those members of Congress who spoke out against him. It's a really dangerous thing to have the president controlling the rule of law.
Yeah, I'll say. we are having some victories. I have to say, though, I said earlier, Barb, it's just so exhausting, isn't it? I mean, the amount of things we have to sue over and then hope some court stops something. I mean, it is such a breathless cycle of illegality, right? At this point, the court says White House can't dismantle the consumer watchdog. I mean, we just won. We're going to rip the ocean sensors out, and we won that suit. I mean, are you feeling, because I know the Supreme Court is going to have a bunch of stuff coming up, where are you on your hopeful meter about the rule of law?
Well, I agree with you. One of the strategies, I think, as Steve Bannon once said, is to flood the zone with garbage. He used a more colorful term, because you are so busy being distracted by the next thing, you forget about the last thing. And so I think that is part of the strategy, that we can't keep up. There have been some victories, like removing his name from the Kennedy Center, though they leave it shrouded with a tarp in shame.
That's what I just was going to ask you. That's the latest one. Kennedy Center faces new legal demand over tarp. Like, you think we win something, and what's
it's not enough. He's going to cover it up. He doesn't want anyone to see his shame. But I also do think you have a point, Stephanie, in that when there is so much out there to keep track of, some things do get lost in the morass. And, here's one. That there was that slush fund he set up to settle a baseless lawsuit that was going to provide funds to allow people to get reparations for damages for weaponization against them, like the January 6th attackers. They pulled that back. But what's still lingering out there is Trump's own immunity from civil tax investigation and enforcement. There are some experts who say that tax bill, that unpaid tax bill, amounts to about $100 million. And so the most cynical version of this view to me is he led with the slush fund, knowing that would get some controversy, right? And then when that failed, say, okay, have it your way, I'll pull it back. But meanwhile, the thing he really wanted, this loan forgiveness of $100 million, that's going away, and that's still out there. So I think the flooding the zone is an important part of the strategy. So where am I in the hopeful meter? We've got some work to do. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we wake up in a morning when, they're pardoning people that beat cops at the Capitol, and, men who rape little girls for, children for decades, and we're arresting people that put their hand in the reflecting pool. I mean, it does get overwhelming. Because every day, right, Chris, you and I go, can he do that? He can't do that.
He does it.
He just knocked down the East Wing.
Yeah.
So now we're suing over that. Democrats warn White House not to proceed with the arch. Interior Department screams Trump derangement center after preservation groups stopped sue to block Trump's D.C. Garden of Heroes. I mean, he keeps trying to erect all these monuments to himself and getting sued over it. I mean, it's someone was saying, like, what's the Washington looks like Pride Rock after Scar took over. I mean,
yes,
you're absolutely
good
right.
Analogy, isn't it? Let me just say a couple of things about that. One is he's a narcissist, and that's why he wants his name everywhere. But it is more than that. This is an authoritarian move to make it appear that the leader is all powerful, that you are helpless and you are hopeless, and the idea is to just give up. And one of the things that's so important is, we may not be able to pay attention to everything that's going on, but we do need to pay attention to some of the things that are going on. And for each of us, choose the things that matter to you. But disengagement from politics is part of the strategy, for people to say, I'm too exhausted, all I can control is my job and my family, and that's all I'm going to worry about. But we can't disengage because, of course, that's the antithesis of democracy. Yeah. And that's part of the goal here. So stay engaged, but, if we need a rest now and then, that's okay.
That was a break. Well, that was part of the beautiful, uplifting message from both of the Obamas last week. That just, So Justice Department sues UFC terror plot, UFC terror plot in ballroom appeal. First of all, this guy apparently loved Hitler and was anti-Semitic, and I'm like, first of all, this is doesn't sound like a left-wing guy, but I mean, here we go with this ridiculous ballroom that's going to cost taxpayers God knows how much.
Yeah. So what's funny about the ballroom is every time there is some sort of potential threat, it is evidence about why we need the ballroom. Now, if every president would agree that he will never leave the fortress of the White House, maybe that makes sense, and we should build it as a fortress. But tell me that a president isn't going to go out and do rallies across the country, isn't going to go to political conventions that are hosted in cities around the country, is never going to visit anywhere outside, is never going to go to the NBA finals or
Yeah,
a
yeah.
graduation ceremony. It's just not going to happen. And
It has
so
to be a mobile ballroom that's around like the pub
yeah,
mobile.
exactly. It's just ludicrous, and so uh, it's it's sort of a shameful exploitation of an unfortunate situation.
So let's talk about the book. It offers a piercing, urgent, deeply informed expose on the escalating threat of far-right politics to American democracy and national security. Boy, that's a good point, and a clear roadmap for how to stop it. That's the point. You draw on your decades of experience as a federal prosecutor to show us the detrimental effects of a government that uses corruption, cruelty, and chaos as tools of control. How rampant corruption and cruelty are being weaponized to manipulate every facet of American life. So you offer clear strategies that ordinary Americans can utilize. This is what the Obamas talked about. This is what gives you hope and gives all of us hope, is do something. From organizing teach-ins and protests to running for local office to reclaim the rule of law, ensure that elected officials serve the public interest and not their own. Again, this is by, grounded in your abiding faith in the U.S. Constitution to help restore power to the people. Give us your elevator pitch for that, for what we do.
I think sometimes people think everything will be fine. We're a strong country. We're resilient. We've been through some things before. Those things are all true, but those efforts of resistance and resilience only happen because of the strength of people who fought for our country, and we need to do it again. We can't leave it to others to take care of. And I offer some, institutional changes that might require lobbying for legal changes, but there's so many things we as individuals can do. So we can work on campaigns, and campaigns that matter are often local campaigns. The county clerks, those are the people who count the votes. Those are really important, the people who fill those jobs. So maybe think about supporting candidates who are working as county clerks. There are great ways to chip in and get involved, even if you don't know where to start. And I would suggest some of these great organizations like the League of Women Voters, who just work on providing good information about elections and candidates and campaigns, or these indivisible chapters all around the country involved in grassroots democracy, and they'll have you knocking on doors, and they'll plug you in as a volunteer for an hour or an hour and a half on a weekend, if that's what you want to do. There's something called Run for Something. If you're interested in running for public office and don't know where to begin, they have training programs online, and they can teach you what you need to do to become a candidate. So there are a lot of things we can do at the political level, but the easiest thing you can do right now today is to talk to people in your sphere of influence. Research shows that we are most influenced by the people around us. And so your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones, just talk to them about any one of these issues and about how much is at stake here. And that regardless of which party controls the White House next time, what's really important is that we uphold these pillars of democracy, because otherwise one side or the other is going to change our country in a way that we no longer recognize and no longer have the power to change.
I'm going to mangle it, as I do most quotes, but Michelle Obama said something to the effect of, hope is is the light that sparks change, but hope is a choice. So that's to your point too. Just real quick, speaking of voting, because that's only everything now. Senator Slotkin introduced bill to bar presidents from sending troops or armed feds to polling places, and then the other headline this morning: Trump administration delays release of voting machine study. Between that and him trying to stop mail-in voting, what are your biggest concerns, and what can we do to, safeguard these upcoming midterms?
Yeah, I am very concerned that there is going to be an effort. They certainly had a test run in 2020, and this time around they're in charge and have learned some lessons. So I do worry about sending government officials, federal agents, or military out to polling places. Not that they can legally interfere with people's right to vote, but that it might be just a show of intimidation that causes people to stay away. I think these collection of ballots has all been part of spreading this false narrative that there's fraud in our elections, when there's just no evidence to suggest that. President Trump should not be permitted to stop vote by mail. He is claiming that his authority over the U.S. Postal Service could prevent them from accepting vote by mail. But that is up to the states to control the time, place, and manner of holding elections. So I think that lawsuits should prevail in preventing that. But of course, we can never predict the outcome. And if they are to do things like send troops to polling places, the unwinding of that may not occur until after the fact. And that could cause a real harm in voter turnout. So it's something like 1 in 4 Democrats and 1 in 5 Republicans use voting by mail. And so maybe he is skewing the odds there. There's also this effort to require proof of citizenship before one can vote that I think would likely have a disparate impact on likely Democratic voters. So I think there are a lot of ways. So I think the best things that we can do is make sure our loved ones and friends have good information. If you have the time and wherewithal, become a polling place volunteer or poll worker, because we're going to need an army of
Yep, we are. And you start by getting the fix, saving America from the corruption of a mob-style government, and we end, as we always do, by saying, Wolverines!
Yes!
We love you, Barb McQuaid.
Thank you, Stephanie.
See you soon.
Thanks,
there
Barb.
she goes. Legal rock star.
250 years after our founding, King Charles III stood before Congress and acknowledged the same truth that sparked the Revolution. There are no kings in America. Make your stance clear with the No Kings American Flag lapel pin, a 1-inch by 1-inch American flag pin embedded with our No King symbol. Go to store.politicalvoicesnetwork.com. Get your No Kings lapel pin now.
On the line with us is the editor-in-chief of Healthcare Uncovered, Wendell Potter, the former vice president of the massive insurance giant Cigna, whistleblower, president of the Center for Health and Democracy, author of Deadly Spin and Nation on the Take. Most importantly, his Substack is absolutely extraordinary. Healthcare Uncovered over on Substack, or just plug in Wendell Potter, it'll come right up. Wendell, welcome back to the program. It's great having you with us.
Tom, it's wonderful to be back on your show, as always.
So I subscribe to your newsletter, as so many other people do, healthcareuncovered.substack.com, by the way. And your most recent piece is titled I believe it's your most recent piece, Federal Fraud Watchdog Documents How Medicare Advantage Fails People When They're Most Vulnerable. And you open the story with the story of your mother. You want to share that with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, it was a few years after I left Cigna. I had, in my previous career, encouraged people to sign up for Medicare Advantage, and that included my parents. And I found out, my mother did, sadly, what that means when you get older and frail. My mother broke her hip. She needed skilled nursing care. She was in a United Healthcare Medicare Advantage plan, and we had a hell of a time getting her into a facility that was nearby and that provided quality care. So they frankly were telling me that I should probably get my mother's affairs in order because she was running out of approvals for continuing care. So I disenrolled my mother from that United plan, put her back into traditional Medicare. She went to a skilled nursing facility that really worked to get her up and healthy again, and she lived several more years after that. It saved her life, I assure you, to move her out of that United Healthcare plan and that skilled nursing facility that was essentially telling us get ready for her death.
Wow. I mean, this is just, it continues to shock me. I mean, I'll get calls from people who start talking about their Medicare plan, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a Medicare plan.
Right.
You know, it's like, for people who don't understand, let's just clearly make definitions here. Prior to George Bush's presidency, basically everybody was on real Medicare. And then Bush came along and had this great idea, let's privatize Medicare. And him and the Republicans got together. And I think it was in 2005 that they passed that bill that
it was 2003.
2003, thank you. So tell us the story.
Yeah, prior to that, there were private plans, but they weren't doing too well, at least to satisfy Republicans who've been trying to privatize the Medicare program for a long time. In 2003, when George Bush was in the White House and Republicans controlled both houses of Congress, they passed a bill called the Medicare Modernization Act. And among other things, it created the Part D prescription drug plan. You know, it's the first time people with Medicare had been able to get a drug benefit, and that's good. Although the way they did it, not so good. But it also created Medicare Advantage as we know it. And the promise was that Medicare Advantage would save taxpayers dollars. It would assure access to high quality care for Medicare beneficiaries. And it was all a ruse. It has never done any of that. It has never, not only has it not saved the government or taxpayers any money, it cost us billions of dollars more every single year. The MedPAC estimates that this year alone we'll be overpaying private insurance companies $76 billion to manage the care of about half of the people who are enrolled in Medicare. People, when they sign up for these plans, don't realize they're giving up traditional Medicare. They're going into a private plan run by companies like United Health and Aetna and and Elevance, the Blue Cross plans, and Humana, which is very big. I used to work for Humana. Humana makes most of its money, almost all of its money these days on Medicare.
Wow. So I find this whole new the system just remarkable. Now, the hook or the real story of your story that you sent out, we're talking with Wendell Potter over at healthcareuncovered.substack.com, was that there are two new federal reports that just came out from the federal government about these so-called Advantage plans, these Medicare Advantage plans, and how they're actually screwing people. I'm astonished that the federal government actually said this, but apparently they had no choice. You want to fill us in?
Yeah, it's the Office of the Inspector General of Health and Human Services, which of course is during the Trump administration, is a Trump-led agency. But the OIG is somewhat more independent and does studies like this at the request of members of Congress. And it showed vividly to these two reports that increasingly Medicare Advantage plans deny necessary care, and that the three biggest for-profits, United Health, Aetna, which is owned by CVS, and Humana, are the greatest offenders, and to the point that they almost automatically reject or deny requests for skilled nursing care up to 90 to 95% of the time. And you're right at the top of the show. They do this because they know that few people will appeal those denials. They don't know they have that right, or it's too cumbersome, or they're sick and they're old or they're frail, and they just don't do it. So people die prematurely because of the behavior of these companies who are more committed to enriching their shareholders than making sure that people who are enrolled in their plans get the care, the skilled nursing care, the rehab care that they need.
This actually is Paul Ryan throwing grandma off the cliff.
It is. It absolutely is. It's exactly right. And just imagine, we will never know, but untold thousands of seniors have died prematurely because they have been lured into these Medicare Advantage plans. The sales pitch is compelling. Sign up, zero premiums. You'll get hearing, dental, and vision. You'll get maybe a gym membership. Who wouldn't want that?
Free groceries.
Exactly. What they don't tell you, of course, are the things that could be the difference between life and death when you get older or when you get sick, regardless of your age. These companies are notoriously aggressive in the use of what's referred to as prior authorization, and they will refuse to pay for life-saving care, saying it's not medically necessary, even though your doctor has prescribed it or said it's necessary. They overrule what your doctor says, and unless you can appeal it successfully, you just have to take that no as a final answer. No one should do that, by the way. No one should ever take a denial from an insurance company, whether it's Medicare Advantage or any kind of plan, as a final answer. Fight it.
Yeah, and then this coming from a man who was a former vice president of one of the biggest of these health insurance companies.
Oh, well, hey there, Political Voices viewers. It's me, Stephanie Miller. Thanks so much for being here and supporting the channel. When you like, comment, or subscribe, it really helps us and our sponsors, and it's the sponsors who make this show possible. So we really appreciate you supporting the people who support us. Stay right here for a quick message from one of those sponsors.
Hi everybody, this is Bob Circosta, and it's time for another Bob's Best Buys. And today we're talking about pain, something we can all relate to, right? Whether it be stiff joints, sore knees, or those everyday aches and pains. Well, now there's a way to help control the pain, and it's called Artrex, a cream that works. From the team at BioVed, Artrex is activated by Ayurveda, an ingredient that's been around for 5,000 years. It focuses on natural wellness, promoting circulation, and helping to fight inflammation. It's plant-based and absorbs fast. And just for listening right now, BioVed has put together a special package you won't find anywhere else. Go to biovedproducts.com/Bob. That's biovedproducts.com/Bob. Isn't it time to feel better, move better, and live better? Now you can with Artrex.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
You know, I've said for years that Democrats need to follow what Newt Gingrich accomplished back in the 90s for the GOP, and that's to have an actual candidate for every office every year, and not just a placeholder. Look, I've interviewed some candidates who were just placeholders. In fact, one guy told me that if he won, he would retire, he'd resign because it wasn't enough money, which was a weird thing. But actual candidates with bold vision and a willingness to fight the good fight, especially where I live in rural America, where my neighbors hate big government and don't realize that they're really ruled by big corporations. So who runs America, especially in my neck of the woods? Is it corporations? Is it we the people? I look at Iowa. The race for Secretary of Agriculture there could be one of those places where we begin to flip some of the script, and that's why I've asked Chris Jones to join us. Chris is a clean water advocate and candidate for Iowa's Secretary of Agriculture position. He has a plan to take back power from the monopolies and, well, hand it back to we the people. You can check out his website, chrisjonesforiowa.com. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
All right, Rick, happy to be here.
So good on you. Let's start with the big question. It's always why are you doing this? Why would you do this to yourself and your family?
Yeah, sometimes you wonder that, yourself, when you're running. But look, I've been advocating for clean water and a better agricultural system here in Iowa for years. And finally, I retired 3 years ago and decided that if I wanted change, I was going to have to run for something. Just writing about it and talking about it to people wasn't going to do it. And running for something helps give power to what I've done previously in my career. And so I hope to change Iowa. I think a lot of people want change here. They want better water. They want a better environment. They want a farming system that better serves rural Iowa. And so that's what I'm endeavoring to do.
Now, you've said that we need a Secretary of Agriculture in Iowa for the people, not just corporate agriculture. So for a meat packing worker, a rural nurse, a custodian in Iowa, what changes in their day-to-day lives if you win this office versus what we've got as big ag control? What's the goal?
Well, the goal is to rekindle life in rural Iowa. And so with consolidation in agriculture, especially consolidation in the livestock industry, we've seen a decline of our rural towns. We have 99 counties in Iowa, 70 of them are losing population. So many of our towns are just a shell of their former self. Our towns lose their physician, they lose their attorney, they lose their school, they lose their grocery store, and then the only thing left is a tavern. And, that's not the rural Iowa we want. This has especially been aligned with big meat and consolidation in the livestock industry. We once had 800 small meat packing facilities in Iowa. Now we have 68. We've lost all small scale livestock production. We've taken a lot of our animals off of pasture and put that all into corn and soy. And it's really eroded the quality of life in rural Iowa, and it's degraded the quality of our water. And so these are the things that affect both urban and rural people both.
Now, what do you say to the person who goes, you're just one of those greens who just cares about the environment? You're going to kill the economy, Chris. All of your regulations and all you're caring about air and water, it's bad for us.
Well, look at our farm economy right now. Farmers aren't making money. They're underwater for both corn and soybeans in terms of the cost of production versus what the price that they get for the commodities right now. We have not such a good pork market right now. We have the second highest farm bankruptcy rate in the United States here in Iowa. And so economically speaking, farmers are not doing well now, thanks to Trump disrupting the commodity markets. We have the fertilizer supplies being disrupted, price of diesel fuel above $6 a gallon. So things are not good now. And so why are we doing this? We're getting polluted water and we're not getting good economic outcomes for both farmers and small towns.
Now, what could the Secretary of Agriculture do? Because look, the reality is as you pointed out, you went from hundreds of meatpacking firms down to 68, I think you said. Monopolies have basically taken over, where these big agribusinesses are controlling more and more land. Small farmers are being squeezed out. What can the Secretary of Agriculture do? This seems like a Washington problem. Walk me through it.
Well, you're right. It is a Washington problem, but look, we've lost control of our agriculture to the federal government and to the big multinational corporations. And really, these are the same thing when we look at who has the most influence in our government. And so we need a Secretary of Agriculture to take the bully pulpit and advocate for a better production system. We need the Secretary of Agriculture to have the back of our Congress people and help educate them on these issues. And we need to return power to the people. We need to return power to the farmers and return power to our small towns, and to, again, grab that power away from the corporations. We need policy, right? We need to develop policy at both the state and the federal level that's going to help diversify this system and, again, rekindle economic activity in small towns.
Now, I spent some time on your website, and it's a great website. There's a lot of information there. You've got a 28-point plan. Mm-hmm. And one of the knocks against Democrats is they've got 28-point plans, whereas the other side, it's all about narrative. But your 28-point plan, there are some very concrete policy ideas on how to rebuild local and regional processing plants, for instance. And how do you translate that into more union quality jobs, better wages, safer conditions, and making people's lives better? Out of the 28-point plan, is the argument we're going to make people's lives better?
Absolutely, we're going to make people's lives better. And so when corporations control the industry, when we've had all this consolidation, that's bad for the working person. And so we used to have 68,000 farmers raising hogs here in Iowa. Now we have about 4,000. How is that good for the working person? When we have the 68,000 farmers raising hogs, well, those people are spending money in small towns, money circulating throughout the economy. They need truck drivers. They need skilled tradesmen. They need people in town to provide services. When we have only a few farmers raising hogs and only 4 companies that are processing the meat, that's not good for the average worker. We need a system where more people are involved in the production.